What if I told you that a small Lincoln penny sitting quietly in your old coin jar could be much more interesting than it looks? Most people see an old penny, notice the date, and immediately think it's just 1 cent. But experienced coin collectors know that this can be a big mistake. Today, we are going to look at 5 different Lincoln cents dated 1961, Pennies in 1972 and 1973. At first glance, these coins may look almost identical, but hidden inside these dates are details that can completely change the story of a coin. And I want you to pay special attention to 1972, because there is a famous double die variety from that year that collectors actively search for. The important thing is that we are not going to believe every crazy price claim you see online. We're going to learn what actually makes these coins interesting, what details you should look for, and why condition, mint marks, varieties, and errors can make such a huge difference. So before you spend that old Lincoln cent, stop for a moment and check the date. Look at the numbers. Look around Liberty. Check In God We Trust. Look for the mint mark. And most importantly, examine the coin carefully for unusual doubling or other genuine varieties. Because here's the exciting part. The coin in your hand doesn't have to look special at first. Sometimes the clue you're searching for is incredibly small, and you could easily miss it if you don't know exactly where to look. So stay with me until the end, because we're going through all 5 dates one by one, starting with the 1961 Lincoln cent, then 1962, 1971, the famous 1972 variety, and finally 1973. Imagine finding an old Lincoln cent in a box of coins, a jar, or even an inherited collection. At first glance, it may look like nothing more than an ordinary old penny. But what if the date says 1961? Before you spend it or throw it into a pile of common coins, take a closer look. The 1961 Lincoln cent is a fascinating piece of American coin history. And while most examples are not extremely valuable, certain conditions, mint marks, and varieties can make a big difference. The coin we are looking at belongs to the famous Lincoln cent series. Abraham Lincoln appears on the obverse facing right. Around him are the words "In God We Trust," Liberty, and the date. The design was created by Victor David Brenner and had already become one of the most recognizable designs in American coinage. Now look carefully at the date. If your coin says 1961, that is the first thing you should confirm. But the date alone does not automatically make the coin rare. This is one of the biggest mistakes new collectors make. They see an older date and immediately assume that the coin must be worth a fortune. The truth is much more interesting. A coin's value can depend on rarity, condition, mint of origin, errors, varieties, and collector demand. One of the most important details is the mint mark. Look below the date on the obverse. Depending on where the coin was produced, you may see a small letter or no mint mark. That tiny detail can help identify the coin's origin. When you are examining a 1961 cent, don't just look at the portrait of Lincoln. Slowly inspect the area around the date and below it. Condition is another major factor. Imagine 2 1961 cents sitting beside each other. One has been circulating for decades. Its surfaces are scratched. Lincoln's hair and cheek are worn, the lettering is weak, and the original color has disappeared. The second coin has sharp details, clean surfaces, strong lettering, and attractive original red color. Even though both coins have the same date, collectors may value them very differently. This is why you should never judge an old coin simply by its age. Now let's talk about the metal and physical feel of the coin. Lincoln cents from this era were made from a copper-rich composition, giving them that classic reddish-brown or brown appearance when they age. Over decades, copper naturally changes color. Bright original red coin can be much more desirable than a heavily worn brown example, especially when the coin is in a very high grade. But there is another important warning. Do not clean your coin just because it looks dirty. Cleaning can permanently damage the original surface and may actually reduce collector interest. A coin that looks old and naturally toned can be much more desirable than a coin that has been aggressively polished. So what should you do if you find a 1961 Lincoln cent? Now let's move to another Lincoln cent that collectors frequently encounter. The 1962 Lincoln cent. At first glance, the 1962 cent may appear almost identical to the 1961 example. Lincoln is on the front. The date appears near the lower right side of the portrait, and the famous words surround his image. But when you start studying coins seriously, you learn something very important. Sometimes the smallest details are the ones that matter. The first thing you should do is confirm the date. Is it really 1962? Older coins can have worn digits, and sometimes damage or corrosion can make a number difficult to read. Once you've confirmed the date, look directly underneath it for the mint mark. A coin with no mint mark and a coin with a D mint mark can have completely different production histories. That doesn't necessarily mean one is automatically rare, but the mint mark is an important part of identification. The next step is condition. If your 1962 cent has been heavily circulated, you will probably see wear across Lincoln's portrait. His hair may be smooth, the cheek may have lost detail, and the lettering may show signs of contact. On the reverse, the details of the design can also become weaker. But now imagine finding a 1962 cent with brilliant original color, sharp lettering, strong details, and very few marks. That's where things get more interesting. Collectors often use grades to describe the condition of coins. A circulated coin can have significant wear, while an uncirculated coin retains the details and surfaces associated with a coin that has avoided normal circulation. At the highest levels, even tiny marks can affect the grade, and this is where the word condition rarity becomes important. A coin doesn't necessarily have to have a tiny mintage to be difficult to find in superb condition. Millions of coins may have been produced, but decades of circulation can destroy the number of examples that remain in pristine condition. Think about what happens to a penny after it leaves the mint. It gets dropped, scratched, rubbed against other coins, exposed to moisture, carried in pockets, and placed into cash registers. Over 50 or 60 years, very few coins survive without significant marks. That is why collectors carefully examine the surfaces. Now look at the color. You may see a 1962 cent that is dark brown, another may be reddish brown, and occasionally, you may encounter one that still retains a strong original red appearance. Color alone doesn't make a coin rare, but original color combined with exceptional preservation can make a coin much more desirable. One thing I want you to remember is that you should not clean the coin to make the color brighter. This is one of the most common mistakes beginners make. Scrubbing, polishing, chemicals, or abrasive materials can leave permanent evidence on the surface. Instead, hold the coin carefully by its edges and inspect it under good lighting. Look around Lincoln's portrait. Look at the date. Check. Liberty. Examine In God We Trust. Then turn the coin over and inspect the reverse. The reverse of the earlier Lincoln cent design features the familiar wheat ears, which is why collectors often call these wheat cents. If your 1962 coin actually has a wheat reverse, stop and double-check the coin, because standard 1962 Lincoln cents are from the later memorial design era rather than the wheat reverse era. This is exactly why careful identification matters before assigning a value. A genuine 1962 Lincoln cent is part of a period when the United States Mint was producing enormous quantities of cents, so the date alone should not be treated as a guarantee of rarity. But that doesn't mean you should ignore the coin. A collector should ask several questions. Where was it minted? What is its condition? Is the color original? Are there unusual die characteristics? Is there doubling? Is the strike strong? Are there any major errors? And perhaps most importantly, does the coin match a recognized variety? This is where coin collecting becomes almost like detective work. You start with a date, then you identify the mint, then you inspect the surfaces, then you compare details, and finally, if something looks unusual, you investigate further. So if you find a 1962 Lincoln cent, don't throw it aside just because someone tells you that all 1962 pennies are common. At the same time, don't believe every internet claim that says an ordinary example is worth thousands of dollars. The truth is usually more specific. A normal circulated coin may be inexpensive, while a very high-grade or unusual variety can command much more. The market rewards coins that are genuinely scarce and desirable, not simply coins that happen to be old. And that is the lesson of the 1962 cent. The date gets your attention, but the details tell the real story. Now we come to the 1971 Lincoln cent, and this is where the search gets even more interesting. If you find a 1971 cent, don't just look at the date and put it away. Take a few seconds to examine it properly. The 1971 Lincoln cent belongs to the Memorial Reverse era. On the obverse, you have Victor David Brenner's famous portrait of Abraham Lincoln. On the reverse is the Lincoln Memorial, designed by Frank Gasparo. By 1971, the Lincoln cent had already been part of American life for more than 60 years. The coin was being produced in huge quantities, and that means ordinary examples are not automatically rare. In fact, PCGS lists a mintage of more than $2.9 billion for the 1971 Lincoln cent alone. So why should you still check one? Because mintage isn't the entire story. One of the most interesting areas for collectors is the possibility of varieties and double dies. PCGS's Modern Lincoln Cent Price Guide lists a recognized 1971 double die obverse, as well as other 1971 varieties. This is exactly why you should inspect the lettering and date instead of looking only at the coin's overall appearance. A true double die is not the same thing as ordinary machine doubling or damage. A genuine doubled die variety is created during the die-making process, and the resulting design can show a distinctive secondary impression. If you see something unusual around the date, Liberty or In God We Trust, don't immediately announce that you found a major error. Take a clear photograph, compare it with known examples, and if necessary, seek professional authentication. The mint mark is another important clue. AD means Denver, and S indicates San Francisco. If there is no mint mark, the coin can be from Philadelphia for this era. Different mintages and different varieties mean collectors may pay different prices depending on the exact coin. But condition remains critical. Imagine a 1971 cent that has been sitting in circulation for 50 years. It may have scratches, dark surfaces, flattened details, and contact marks everywhere. Now compare that to a coin that looks almost untouched, with strong original red color and sharp details. Those two coins may have the same date, but they are completely different collecting propositions. PCGS's data shows just how much high-grade condition can matter. For example, its 1971 listing records an auction result of $1,380 for an MS-67. Example, a very high-grade coin, not an ordinary circulated penny. That distinction is extremely important for anyone watching a coin video. If you hear that a 1971 penny sold for hundreds or thousands of dollars, that does not mean every 1971 penny is worth that amount. Usually the price belongs to a very specific coin with a specific grade, color designation, variety, or other desirable characteristic. This is one reason coin collecting requires patience. You should never look at a record auction, price, and assume your pocket change. Coin has the same value. Instead ask, is my coin the same variety? Is it the same mint mark? Is it in similar condition? Does it have the same color designation? Has it been authenticated? These questions protect you from unrealistic valuations. Now let's talk about preservation. If you discover a beautiful 1971 cent, don't clean it. Don't rub it with a cloth. Don't use metal polish. Don't put chemicals on it. Hold it by the edges and keep it somewhere safe. If the coin appears to be unusually sharp and valuable, professional grading may be worth considering. A grading service can authenticate the coin, assign a grade, and encapsulate it for protection. The 1971 cent is therefore a perfect example of how coin collecting works. The coin may look ordinary. Billions were made, but within a huge population, there can be coins with unusual varieties or exceptional preservation. And that's why every time you see a 1971 Lincoln cent, you should ask yourself one question. Is this just another old penny? Or does it have something special? Hiding in the details? Take your time. Check the date. Check the mint mark. Study the lettering. Examine the color. Look for legitimate doubling. And never trust a huge value claim without verifying the exact variety and grade, because sometimes the most interesting part of a coin isn't what you can see from across the room. It's the tiny detail you notice when you finally take a closer look. Now we arrive at the 1972 Lincoln cent, and this is probably the most important coin in this 5-coin search. Why? Because 1972 is famous for one of the most dramatic double die varieties in the entire Lincoln cent series, and this is not just an internet rumor. PCGS identifies the 1972 double die obverse FS101 as a major variety, and its records show substantial prices for authenticated examples. One PCGS listed MS66 Plus, red example, has a recorded auction price of $1,380, while another PCGS auction record shows an MS67 Plus, red example, reaching $14,400 in 2019. But before you get excited, remember something very important. Not every 1972 cent is a $1,000 coin. The ordinary 1972 cent is common. The valuable coin is the specific double die variety. So what exactly are we looking for? The famous variety is known as the 1972 double die obverse, commonly identified by collectors as S101. The doubling can be visible in major design elements including the date Liberty and In God We Trust. PCGS explains that strong doubling on these areas is a key characteristic of the famous variety. This is where your inspection needs to become very careful. Start with the date. Look closely at the numbers 1, 9, 7, and 2. Do you see a clear secondary image? Does part of the digit appear separated or spread in a way that looks like genuine design doubling? Then move to Liberty. Don't simply look for a blurry edge. You are searching for a recognizable double design, not random damage. Next, inspect In God We Trust. On the famous 1972 double die, the doubling is strong enough that it can be noticed, without extreme magnification, in many examples. PCGS specifically notes that strong doubling was visible on the date Liberty and In God We Trust. But here is where beginners can get fooled. There are many kinds of doubling-like appearances on coins. Mechanical or strike-related doubling can create flat, shelf-like effects. Damage can also make letters appear strange. A genuine double die is a specific die variety and needs to match known diagnostics. So don't take a blurry photograph and immediately call your coin the famous 1972 double die. Study it. Compare it with authenticated examples. If it appears convincing, consider professional authentication. There is another fascinating part of the 1972 story. PCGS has documented counterfeit examples of the famous double die cent. That tells you something about how desirable the variety became. Counterfeiters know collectors are interested in this coin, so valuable varieties can attract fake examples. That means authentication matters. The 1972 cent also has an interesting historical connection to the minting process. PCGS explains that changes to die and hub preparation around this period contributed to the appearance of several significant double die varieties, including the famous 1972 issue. This is what makes error collecting so fascinating. The coin was not intentionally designed to be rare. Instead, something went wrong, or more precisely, something unusual happened during the preparation of the die. That tiny difference created a variety that collectors would later recognize as extremely desirable. And there are multiple 1972 double die varieties. The famous FS101 is the one that receives the most attention. But it is not the only double die associated with the year. PCGS notes additional double die varieties for 1972 circulation strikes. So if you're searching through a large group of old Lincoln cents, the 1972 date deserves special attention. Now let's talk about value. This is where many YouTube videos become misleading. You may see headlines saying 1972 penny worth thousands. That statement can be technically true for certain authenticated, high-grade examples, but it can be misleading. If viewers think every 1972 cent is worth thousands, for example, PCGS currently lists an MS66 red FS101 example with a $1,250 price guide value and a June 2026 auction sale of $1,342. Another high-grade example, MS66 Plus red, has a PCGS price guide value of $1,950 in the cited record, and the historical auction record can be dramatically higher for exceptional grades. That's why you should never use one. Record price is the expected value of every coin. Your circulated 1972 cent might be worth only a small amount over face value, or sometimes essentially face value, while a verified major doubled die in exceptional condition can be worth dramatically more. The difference is the variety and condition. So if you have a 1972 Lincoln cent, get your magnifying glass ready. Check the date, check Liberty, check In God We Trust, then inspect the reverse and the overall condition. And if you think you found the famous double die, don't clean it, don't scratch it, and don't alter it. Put it somewhere safe. Document it with clear photographs. Then have it properly evaluated. The 1972 cent teaches us one of the most important lessons in coin collecting. A tiny difference can sometimes create a huge difference in collector value. You don't need to find a coin with a giant error visible from 10 feet away. Sometimes the valuable clue is only a few millimeters wide. So the next time you see a 1972 Lincoln cent, don't spend it without checking the obverse carefully. This is one date that absolutely deserves a second look. Our final coin is the 1973 Lincoln cent. And by now you should understand why the date alone is never enough to determine value. The 1973 cent looks familiar. Abraham Lincoln appears on the obverse, while the Lincoln Memorial appears on the reverse. This design combination was standard for the era, but 1973 is still worth examining carefully. PCGS records the 1973 D cent at a mintage of 3,549,576,588 pieces. It was a 95% copper, 5% zinc coin with a weight of 3.11 grams. Those numbers tell us something important. An ordinary 1973 D cent isn't rare simply because it is more than 50 years old. But again, mintage is only one part of the story. Start with the mint mark. Look below the date. You may find a D and S or no mint mark depending on the coin's origin. Once you know the mint, you can compare it with the correct variety and condition information, then inspect the surfaces. A circulated 1973 cent may have scratches, dense dark toning, and worn details. A high-grade example may retain strong original red color and excellent detail. This difference can be extremely important. PCGS records an auction record of 4,994 for a 1973 DMS. 67 example. But once again, don't make the mistake of saying every 1973 D penny is worth thousands. That record belongs to an exceptional certified coin. Most coins you find in circulation will be nowhere near that level. This is one of the most important things to explain when talking about collectible coins. A headline might say 1973 penny worth thousands. But the real question is always, which 1973 penny? Is it Philadelphia? Denver? San Francisco? Is it circulated? Is it uncirculated? Is it red, brown, or brown? Does it have a recognized variety? Does it have a legitimate mint error? Has it been professionally graded? Those questions determine the actual market position of the coin. Now look at the date. Check whether the numbers are correctly formed. Look for doubling. But remember that not every unusual-looking edge is a doubled die. Compare any suspected variety with established references before making a conclusion. Then inspect Liberty. Check In God We Trust. Look at Lincoln's hair and facial details. On the reverse, examine the Lincoln Memorial and lettering. A high-quality coin should have sharp, well-defined details. Heavy wear can reduce the coin's grade significantly. Another important characteristic is color. A copper coin can change color naturally with age. A 1973 cent that has retained strong original red coloration may be more desirable when combined with high grade, but don't try to create that appearance yourself. Never polish the coin. Never scrub it. Never use harsh chemicals. Never try to restore the red color. Collectors generally want the coin in its original state, and cleaning can leave permanent hairlines or other surface problems. Instead, protect the coin and let a professional determine what it is worth if you believe it may be special. There is also something interesting about the 1973 cent from a historical perspective. When this coin was produced, the United States was going through a very different era. The coin entered everyday commerce during the early 1970s, and it could have been used for purchases that seem incredibly inexpensive compared with today's prices. Decades later, the coin has become a small piece of history, and that's what makes searching old cents so enjoyable. You aren't only searching for money, you are searching for stories. Maybe the coin was saved by someone who collected pennies. Maybe it sat inside an old drawer for decades. Maybe it passed through thousands of transactions. You simply don't know. And sometimes the coin that looks the most ordinary can be the one that makes you stop and look twice. So if you find a 1973 Lincoln cent, remember the process. First, confirm the date. Second, identify the mint mark. Third, examine condition. Fourth, check the color. Fifth, look carefully for recognized varieties and genuine errors. And finally, if the coin appears unusually valuable, get professional confirmation before trusting a huge price estimate. The 1973 cent may not be a rare coin simply because of its date, but exceptional examples can still be desirable. PCGS's auction record proves that condition can make a dramatic difference. And now we have reached the end of our 5-coin search. We started with 1961, then 1962, then 1971, then the especially important 1972 double die, and finally 1973. 5 dates, 5 different stories, and one major lesson. Never judge a coin by its date alone. Check the mint mark. Check the condition. Check the color. Check the details. Check the varieties. Because coin collecting isn't about believing every unbelievable price you see online. It's about knowing exactly what you have. And if you ever find a 1972 cent with strong, genuine doubling or an exceptionally preserved example of one of these dates, don't rush to sell it based on a random internet claim. Study it. Authenticate it. Then learn its real market value.